What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It's time to continue my 2023 schedule preview and projected records for the 2023 college football season. We continue them with the Stanford Cardinal. Here was the schedule last year for this Stanford team. The overall record for this team going 3-9 overall in 2022. So yeah, kind of a disappointing year for Stanford last year. A lot of, other sports channels were not really high on this team. I was really high on Stanford last year, and I do kind of regret, picking them to go 11-1 last year, or maybe I should say 10-2. I thought this would be a good Stanford team. With the amount of production they had coming back, I thought they would be really good enough to, at least get to a bowl game last year. You look at who they played in the non-conference last year. They played Colgate. They played Notre Dame as well on the road. Of course, that's a game they play every single year. And they played them in the middle of October. That's kind of interesting that they would play them in the middle of October. And they also played BYU out of the non-conference. They are now heading into the Big 12, so we can call them a Power 5 team. So they did have a pretty tough non-conference schedule last year, of course, with Notre Dame and BYU both on the schedule. And they did have a really tough stretch there with USC all the way to Oregon State, and then, of course, at the end of the season. And really the only win in the Pac-12 from last year was, of course, Arizona State. Of course, Arizona State didn't turn out to be as good as we think they were going to be as well. So schedule overall pretty tough last year for the Stanford team. Kind of in a rebuild mode now for this Stanford team. New head coach. Let's see if they can get back to winning ways in the Pac-12. Here's the schedule now for 2023 for Stanford. You look at who they'll play in the non-conference. They'll play Hawaii here on September the 2nd. That will be a road game. And they also get Sacramento State on September the 16th. And they will also play, once again, Notre Dame here to end things out on November the 25th. So the non-conference schedule is not all too tough as it was last year. Of course, Hawaii will be on the road, but, they should probably take care of business in that game. And then you get Sacramento State here on September the 16th. And then you get Notre Dame. Of course, that's a rival game that's played every single year, so I'm kind of looking forward to that matchup there once again. And it will be a home game for Stanford. So let's go game by game now. We know they're going to be playing almost every single Pac-12 team on this schedule. Let's go game by game. So let's start this season off with Hawaii here on September the 6th or the September the 2nd, and then they'll open up Pac-12 play here with USC on the road. This is always pretty tough to play USC every single year in this Week 2 matchup. Stanford has, given USC some problems in the past, but this is a high-powered offense, and they're going to have to go on the road. So they'll have to start out with back-to-back road games to begin the year of 2023, and then they'll get a break after that. They'll get Sacramento State here on September the 16th. Then they'll get back-to-back home games with Pac-12 teams here. They'll play Arizona here on September the 23rd. That could be an interesting game there. Perhaps they could probably get a win there. And then they'll play Oregon here on September the 30th. At least this is a home game for Stanford, but I really don't know how good this Stanford team is going to be this year. Of course, Oregon has a lot of production coming back. Then they'll play Colorado here on the road on October the 13th. Another interesting game here. This will be a weeknight game, so I'm kind of looking forward to this matchup here against Colorado. This is a Colorado team that you don't want to play in the month of November. And then they'll play UCLA here at home on October the 21st. Then they'll play Washington here on October the 28th. The good news is they'll get both of these games at home. UCLA and Washington were both really good teams last year. Then they'll play back-to-back road games here with Washington State and Oregon State here on November the 4th and November the 11th. These are tough back-to-back road games here in the Pac-12, two tough places to play. Washington State, probably going to be a really good team this year. Oregon State, they have DJ Ogule, the transfer from Clemson, coming in. So, yeah, both of these teams will be pretty decent for, this year coming into this 2023 season. And then they'll play Cal here on November the 18th, another interesting game there. And then they'll end things out here with Notre Dame on November 25th. So the schedule overall is pretty tough once again for Stanford. Of course, you have to play USC, Oregon, Washington, and UCLA, the top 4 teams, and also Oregon State, or maybe I should say the top 5 teams from last year in the Pac-12. But there are definitely some winnable games here on the schedule for, Stanford. Maybe Arizona and Cal here are both winnable games, and perhaps Colorado on the road. So maybe they at least can, win 3 Pac-12 games this year. So we'll see how it goes. But let's get now to the projected record for this team. And this is the scale, once again, I use for my projections. If it's a 1% game, these are games where Stanford has no chance of winning in. 20%, there'll be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs. 40%, there'll be a heavy underdog in, about a touchdown. You'll probably see those orange and yellow games a lot here on this schedule. 50-50 games, these will stay in the white. Games where they can go either way. 60%, they'll be favored by at least a touchdown. And then 80% games, they'll be at least favored by a couple touchdowns. You probably won't see any of those purple or blue games on this schedule just because of how tough this schedule is for Stanford. And then they'll play, and then also the 90% games, they'll be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. We're going to start with the green games here for Stanford, the easy wins here for this Stanford team. And I think you got 2 of those here on the schedule. Really, it's only 2 of them on this schedule. I really don't think they're going to be any big-time favorites against any of these Pac-12 teams. But Hawaii and Sacramento State, I think, these are 2 games where there should be big-time favorites. Maybe Hawaii is at 90%. It's maybe not over 95%. Like I said, we don't really know how good this Stanford team is going to be. They're in a rebuild mode, and they were not good last year. So I'm kind of expecting, though, maybe some process heading into this year. Maybe they can start to rebound in the 2024 season, but it's going to really take time for this Stanford team to get really good. I think you got 2 of these games right here in the green. I think these are games where they'll be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. And like I said, I don't have any blue or purple games here on this schedule. So let's now go to the underdog games. I don't have any red games, surprisingly, just because it's Pac-12 teams, and it's also the Pac-12 is really, wide open every single year. We're going to start with the orange games here for Stanford. And I think you got 2 of those games here on the schedule. In the orange, I got USC and Oregon State. 2 road games here that are obviously a tough place to play. USC, they have a high-powered offense. It's going to be really hard for Stanford to really stop this team. I know it's a week 2 matchup. Maybe Stanford could give them a scare, but I don't think there's any chance for them to, beat USC on the road. Same thing with Oregon State. They were a really good team last year. They got DJ Ogale coming in, so maybe this team really is a Pac-12 championship contender. You never know. But both of these teams here, you're seeing them as Pac-12 contenders probably heading into next year. And I don't think Stanford will be able to, beat these teams on the road. Let's go to the yellow games now. Games where they're going to be about a touchdown of underdogs. A heavy underdog, I should say, as well. And that's almost the majority of their schedule. You got Oregon here, UCLA, Washington, both at home, and also Notre Dame here at home. And then you got Washington State here on the road. Now, I probably would have put Washington State as a 50-50 game, but Washington State made it to a bowl game last year. That's why I'm going to put it here in the yellow. But at least you get Oregon, UCLA, Washington, and Notre Dame at home. So maybe they get better down the stretch, and maybe they could knock off these teams. But, it's a rebuild year, like I said. And then, I think I'm just going to put these, though, as a heavy underdog for Stanford. It's not like they're going to get blown out or anything because Stanford is obviously a tough stadium to play as well. But I think almost the majority of their schedule here, they're going to be almost all underdogs in all their, games here. But the rest of the games here, Arizona, Colorado, and Cal here, I think these are all 50-50 games that can go either way for Stanford. I think, maybe they can win all 3 of them. Maybe they lose one of those games. It maybe comes to Colorado on the road. Maybe they win both of those home games against Arizona and Cal. If they at least, win a couple games in the Pac-12, that's going to help them out maybe for 2024. But as of right now, this is a rebuild year for Stanford. We don't know how good this team is going to be. So I think all of these are 50-50 games here on the schedule. Let's go to the projected record now for this Stanford team. So if you look at the games the only couple games that they're favored in with Hawaii and Sacramento State, and also the games that they are underdogs in, and also if you count the 50-50 games for Stanford, you get an overall projected record for this Stanford team at 4-8. Like I said, it's a rebuild year for this Stanford team, but it's a much better record than it was last year at 3-9. I think best case scenario for this team would go 5-7. If they go 5-7, that's kind of a good year for this Stanford team. But if they go 3-9 once again, that's kind of a disaster for this Stanford team. And right now, this Stanford program is kind of in a mess right now. They haven't been that same program since back in the early 2010s. So we'll see how this Stanford team will do this year in 2023. But the overall projected record as of right now, I got them at 4-8. Let me guys know what you think about this Stanford team. What do you think their best case scenario is? What do you think their worst case scenario will be in 2023? And stay tuned here for more sports content on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.